Going. Hey everybody, welcome to MEC's webinar on the latest on Line 5. I'm so glad that you all could join us today. I hope you're staying safe, of course, socially distancing appropriately, and still enjoying what looks like, at least in Southeast Michigan, to be a really beautiful day. I'm Conan Smith. I am the president and CEO of the Michigan Environmental Council. For the next 15 minutes or so, Sean and I are going to talk a little bit about the latest around Line 5, particularly some intervention work that MEC is supporting, and that 67-year-old pipeline in the Straits of Mackinac, what's going on with it, and what we can do to make sure that it doesn't create any more additional environmental harm. We're going to give a pretty high-level overview in this short period of time, and then we're going to try and take your questions and respond to them to the best of our ability. I want to give you a little heads up that one of the things we're going to share with you today is that we are intervening at the Michigan Public Service Commission around a request that Enbridge has made around the tunnel. We can't talk to you very specifically about the legal strategy there because this is an open and public webinar. And we don't want to undermine our partners, of course. So forgive us if you do pose some questions that we defer on. Know that it is in the best interest of Michigan's environment. So Enbridge is moving pretty fast. During the coronavirus slowdown, they did not slow down at all. They submitted permit requests at Eagle. They filed this request at the Public Service Commission. And they are relentless. Fortunately, we're involved in a number of really excellent coalitions, particularly with Tip of the Mitt and National Wildlife Federation, as well as a large coalition of advocates called Oil and Water Don't Mix. All of those groups have been fantastic in responding during a time where our capacity may have been otherwise limited. Today, I've got with me Sean Hammond, who is our policy director and has been intimately involved in a number of these strategies. Sean is an attorney and has worked closely with Charlotte Jameson, our program director for energy, who has a lot of experience in public service commission interventions. Sean, welcome. Great to see you digitally.
Good morning.
Let's jump right in. So there has been this flurry of activity on Enbridge's part concerning its plans. Can you bring the crew up to speed on what's going on?
Yeah, so as you said, lots of things moving very quickly here. And this is all premised on the agreement that Enbridge signed at the end of 2018, where after they did their initial borings in the Straits for sampling, they had only a certain amount of time under that agreement to put in permit requests, and that is sometime mid-June of this year. They had to have all their permit requests in. So despite there being a force majeure clause in that contract, they are pushing forward on all these permits all at once. So what have they done recently? They've named contractors that they're looking to hire to build the tunnel. They've submitted applications to Eagle and Army Corps for Great Lakes Submerged Lands Act construction permitting. So this is the Part 325, if I say that's those permits. It's also filed a number of other permits with Water Resources Division and other divisions at Eagle in order to do the construction necessary to build the facilities and the tunnel. It also submitted the application, as Conan mentioned, to the Michigan Public Service Commission, which is seeking approval to relocate and replace Line 5 from the dual pipelines on the bottom of the Straits to a tunnel in the bedrock underneath the Straits. But this is all in the same time that there's a number of different challenges to all of these things that they are doing around Line 5. So many leading nonprofits, including Oil Water Don't Mix, Groundwork Center, Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council, and others are all working diligently to lead campaigns to shut it down or to reevaluate its continued operations, like Michigan Resource Stewards. Or from the state side, the Attorney General is still suing Enbridge to shut down the line under I believe, under the easement. There's a number of lawsuits that were started. There is also an appeal on a lawsuit to strike down the agreements that Enbridge signed at the end of 2018, to strike down that whole law that authorized those agreements. And now the Straits of Mackinac Alliance is also suing Eagle for not adhering to the Great Lakes Submerged Act. And this is only a few, and we'll see more likely pop up. And there are more in other states on different lines and connecting lines as well. So this is a complex situation of lawsuits and countersuits and attorney general opinions and permitting decisions that are all going to come to a head as we move through this year.
So at the heart of this debate, Sean, we have folks on the side of the environmental community who would like to see Line 5 shut down, and Enbridge itself, which would like to secure the long-term operation of that pipeline. Enbridge seems to think strategically that their best option there is to create this tunnel, which strengthens their case for that long-term operation. They have to go to the Public Service Commission to get that tunnel approved, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the MPSC portion of this strategy?
Yeah. So MPSC typically regulates energy utilities. That's where you see a lot of MEC's work with the MPSC, is intervening in rate cases and integrated resource plans with consumers' energy and DTE. But there's also a provision of law that gives the Michigan Public Service Commission siting of gas lines and oil pipelines. So actually Line 6B, of course, the infamous spill a few years ago, that rerouting had to go through the MPSC. And that actually set the groundwork for a lot of things that are going on with the Line 5 discussion at the MPSC. This is basically to look at the routing of the pipeline. So there's a multi-factor test involved with this hearing, with this decision, and including things like, is the pipeline safe? Is it serve a public need? So the three public service commissioners are tasked with digging in and figuring this out.
So the MPSC too is all new, right? So we have 3 new commissioners as of last year?
Two new commissioners. Chair Sally Talberg has been there for a while. However, Commissioner Dan Scripps and Commissioner Tremaine, I'm blanking on his last name. Phillips, that's right. Tremaine Phillips have been there less than just over a year, I think, for Commissioner Scripps, and less than a year for Tremaine. So those are two-thirds of the commission are appointed by Governor Whitmer. And all 3 actually have a connection to MEC in their past.
MPSC, we would contend, has jurisdiction here, but Enbridge contends that it doesn't need commission approval. Why are they saying that?
So they're of course saying that because they don't want to have to go through the commission process. From having conversations with the commissioners and looking at similar cases, this is going to take north of a year for this case to go work its way through the entire process. What Enbridge is contending is that this is maintenance. This is a simple change of the pipeline, and it doesn't require a full new siting procedure. We, of course, argue that because you are moving it from one spot to another in a significant manner and completely changing the flow of the pipelines, that it is a brand new pipeline and needs to be sited. So this is what is happening right now at the MPSC.
So they met last week on this. What happened there?
So they adopted an order that gives until mid-May, I believe May 13th, in order for public comment on this question of whether Enbridge actually needs an MPSC permit. They are doing this in order to make it easier for all parties, because if this question is answered at the outset, it saves everyone a lot of money from trying to do an intervention or from Enbridge going through the process. So what they want to do is just get this question answered to start. So they adopted an order outlining the public comment period. They did this as a virtual meeting last week. And they basically put a hold on the full application in order to consider and rule on Enbridge's question of whether they are subject to the MPSC at all. They will be meeting, I believe, shortly after that to consider after they can consider the public comment to rule on whether or not Enbridge would need to go through this whole process. And they are, MPSC, given their charge to oversee pipelines and also utility rates, they very quickly figured out a way to meet virtually. This is important to manage a lot of the utility issues that are still ongoing. And we will be pushing for a more robust public engagement strategy as part of this due to some of the things that are difficult to do right now, like public hearings. However, the commissioners can meet virtually, and also they can do things like, I believe, hold cross and do some of the lawyer and procedural things that they need to do during this shutdown virtually.
So over a decade or more now, the Michigan Environmental Council has worked inside the Public Service Commission structure on energy issues, and we found pretty decent success there. Part of that is because it gives us a chance to get data in the light of day from both us and the utilities. Is that similar in this case? Is it to our benefit to go through an MPSC-like process?
Yeah, it's always good to go through a process like this because it gets everything out in the open. This is a very open, very transparent process that allows interveners like MEC and our partners to weigh in, and it puts it all on the public record, and then it creates this record that can be used for future lawsuits and anything like that. It's getting it all out in the open and creating this record is extraordinarily important, and is also just another body that can say no to Enbridge. So you have, of course, the court cases going on right now, all the permits in front of Eagle, and the independent Michigan Public Service Commission that could all rule differently and create more complications for trying to do this tunnel.
It feels to me like through the course of this struggle over the pipeline itself, there's been a whole, one side says this, the other side says that. There's a public relations and media battle that goes on over what is right and what is not right, what is true and what is not true. And, on our side of the aisle, we really would say Enbridge has not been a very trustworthy company. They've not been very transparent in their actions, and they haven't shared really great information through the whole process. What does the discovery process afford us in MPSC? Are we going to be able to get information on the table that might clarify some of the things that are being said publicly?
Yeah, just like the Attorney General's lawsuits and others, discovery in this is a legal proceeding and will open up a lot of documents for review.
And do you have any sense of the timeline for this process?
So for the MPSC specifically, like I said, all comments are due May 13th on the request for declaratory ruling. By May 27th, they will allow Enbridge 2 weeks to reply to those comments. And I believe other people in the case can reply to those comments as well. After that, so sometime following May 27th, they will rule on the declaratory ruling itself. Again, after that, we're looking at probably a year-long process for the MPSC or more. We will need to see what the administrative law judge who is in charge of managing the case decides to put forth on that. And in terms of permitting, those all have different clocks that range from like 30 days from being declared administratively complete, which means the permit is in its final form at the department, to a couple months. So we're going to be hitting deadline after deadline after deadline for public comments, for public hearings, for weighing in. And then all that, of course, is up in the air due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
You mentioned that the commission is accepting comments right now. Are those written? Is there an opportunity for like a public hearing, or is this all because of COVID and the MPSC process online?
I believe they took public comment at their meeting on the 22nd, and they will be taking the rest of their public comment via written comments. And you can make those at michigan.gov/MPSC line 5. The commission has created a one-stop shop for all things to do with this docket.
Sean, thanks for the update. For folks on the webinar, we're going to take the next 12 minutes and try and address the questions that you have and the points that you'd like to make. Sean, Greg Eagle is asking what's being done to reduce the threat of the current line 5, like flow pressure reductions, financial assurances, things like that.
Yeah, this is a part of this whole campaign that's ongoing to pressure Enbridge and to remove the threat of line 5. So, we're working with our partners, and we are a member of course, Oil and Water Don't Mix, Tip of the Watershed Council, National Wildlife Federation. Again, there's a number of lawsuits going on this topic, and we are in pretty constant contact with the Whitmer administration and top level officials there, raising concerns on when we see them. This winter we were flagging pretty constantly, along with our partners, wave heights and making sure that Enbridge was complying with the restrictions there. And there's a number of other tacks that are being taken, but right now it's all just continuing conversations with the administration, because there is so many lawsuits already out there. There's just so many different avenues going on, that we'll see where different things go. I know that even though the administration is 100% focused on keeping Michiganders safe, they're also working on all these other things as well.
For folks online, I'm looking in the Q&A section for additional questions, or if you would prefer, feel free to post them in the chat box. Greg's asking again, Sean, are there differences in strategy and opinion between the governor and the AG on this that you're aware of?
Not that we are aware of at this time. So again, I know there's been a lot of things that have been discussed on the two of them having different fronts and having different tacks. At this point, I think they are on the same page, and they might be doing things differently because that's what their offices allow them to do. But again, I don't know if there's a significant gap between the two of them at this point. And again, since there's ongoing litigation with the Attorney General's office, they are also probably going to weigh in at the Michigan Public Service Commission. But again, right now, trying to check in and confirm things between them on things like Line 5 is extraordinarily difficult, given the focus that those two offices specifically have on making sure that the stay home, stay safe orders are being adopted, that unemployment is getting done, that people aren't being defrauded. So with the pandemic, there's a lot of things that are happening at those two offices that make it difficult for them. But we're routinely checking in, and I don't see a difference in opinion at this moment.
So the AG's office will be part of the MPSC process, right?
Yes, the Attorney General does get to intervene in those cases as well. We've had some preliminary conversations with them, and they do, I believe, plan to intervene.
And then you mentioned on parallel track, there are permits in front of Eagle. So the administration will have some sway there.
Correct. This will go through equals processes, and we will be able to give public comments, participate in any public outreach that they do. And the administration, of course, is the ultimate decider on those permits.
Lana is asking what we know about Michigan's Upper Peninsula dependency on the natural gas that flows through that pipeline that Enbridge claims it provides, what the alternatives are there. And in regards to the Public Service Commission, do they need to take into consideration the provision of that energy in the UP, or do other authorities have to take into account that provision?
Yeah, so in terms of the energy usage in the UP, I will defer to the UP Petroleum Task Force report that was just published a couple weeks ago. I haven't memorized that report yet, but it pretty well outlines what propane is being served by Line 5 in the UP. So in terms of that report is online and easily found. And I would recommend taking a look at that in terms of figuring out how much the UP is relying on Line 5 for energy. It's a smaller amount, but it's still, of course, a key player in that whole system. In terms of what the MPSC has to consider, I believe they can consider energy impacts as part of this. And I would say that the number one criteria that they look at, one of the three tests that they look at, is whether the applicant demonstrated a public need for the pipeline. I would say that energy from that pipeline is part of that public need demonstration.
And working with National Wildlife Federation a year or maybe 2 years ago now, they conducted an assessment of pipeline capacity in the region, and made the argument, I think fairly strongly, that the UP's natural gas or propane needs could be served by other means, reasonable amounts of truck traffic, or filling from Wisconsin, for example. Similarly, refineries in Southeast Michigan take the crude that flows through that pipeline. So it comes down into Metro Detroit, goes over to Canada, but has a little offshoot to the Marathon refinery. Do we have a sense of whether shutting down Line 5 would have a real or serious impact on those refineries in Metro Detroit?
It would. However, the majority of the oil still goes into Canadian markets and to Canadian refineries, but this would have an impact on other refineries in Michigan, yes. And it also has impacts on Northern Michigan's propane supply and the ability for Northern Michigan oil producers to get their oil to market. So there's a lot of interplay here. And the UP Energy Task Force is digging into at least the UP side of that. However, in terms of Michigan's energy portfolio, this is not something that we would be relying on for our energy needs as a whole.
I think one of the concerns that was raised by industry and the company was that a shutdown, an outright shutdown of Line 5 would cause significant spikes in gas prices, particularly in Southeast Michigan. And research seems to have shown that there is sufficient pipeline capacity coming in through the southern part of the state to feed Metro Detroit's needs and the airport's needs and others. And that it may result in a modest price increase at the pump, perhaps 5 cents a gallon. But that 5 cents is very likely to be lost in the volatility of regular gas prices, right?
Yes. Yeah, this is not something that Michigan relies on for our energy needs at all. This is mostly, again, there's a few pockets of Michigan that have heavy reliance on this type of infrastructure, but overall, as part of Michigan's energy infrastructure, it's not a huge impact.
Bentley from LCV is asking, will Michigan taxpayers be on the hook if there's a spill or accident in relation to the construction of the tunnel? And what happens if Enbridge goes bankrupt? So essentially, is there financial assurance that if some crisis happens that Michigan will be taken care of?
So there is supposed to be financial assurance. And as part of their agreement with the state in 2018, they agreed to pay financial assurance up to a certain amount. We question whether that amount is enough. And then that's also one of the points of contention with that particular agreement is that they're not actually, the right companies didn't sign that agreement to be on the hook for the assurance needed. In terms of whether there's, yeah,
Subsidiary companies sign the agreement, but not the parent company.
correct.
Allows them to declare bankruptcy of the smaller unit and avoid the cost.
Yep. As proven in a Minnesota court where Enbridge made that exact argument. So in terms of whether Michigan taxpayers will be on the hook, again, that kind of comes down to that agreement where the Michigan Straits Corridor Authority has joint control over the tunnel right now. However, I believe Enbridge is supposed to be held accountable for that. I will say in the tunnel itself, again, that is, I would say, probably low risk to the waters of the Great Lakes. However, there is, of course, many other pieces of Line 5 that run along the Great Lakes and have major potential impacts on Lake Michigan. If Enbridge goes bankrupt at some point, Michigan would be held they would gain an oil tunnel. Not sure what we could do with that. I'm not sure what anyone would be able to do with that. We'd have to manage to keep it safe and pay the upkeep costs through the Straits Corridor Authority if it was, not sold to a different party. But Enbridge did agree in that agreement to pay for all maintenance up until the end of the 99-year lease that they signed. So it's a complicated infrastructure piece that if Enbridge goes bankrupt, someone will be on the hook, of course, and in all likelihood, it would be the state of Michigan who would, gain some kind of asset out of a Straits Corridor tunnel, but how much and whether that's a negative asset is to be determined.
So in our last minute here, our filing with the Public Service Commission is public now. Can you share just one or two bullet points about our argument that you think are most powerful and relevant?
So, it's hard to say. We are still, of course, looking into this holistically and want to make sure that we get the right arguments. But I'd say looking at what the criteria is that the commission has to look at, which is, again, the public need, the pipeline is designed and routed in a reasonable manner, and the construction meets safety standards. And then they also have to go through the Michigan Environmental Protection Act, or MEPA. And I would say probably public need and MEPA are the strongest possibilities for success. Those are pretty broad interpretations of statute that can be looked at. And those are the ones that, of course, are 100% focused on whether this pipeline is actually necessary for Michigan, and two, whether it would potentially impair Michigan's unique one-of-a-kind natural resources.
Thank you, Sean. I'm really glad that we've got you on the team, learning all this stuff so that you can speak intelligently on my behalf about it. And thanks to the folks who participated in today's webinar. If you need more information, feel free to come to our website, environmentalcouncil.org. Reach out to Sean or myself or anyone on our team. We'd be happy to hook you into this issue, of course. I will say too, the intervention at the Michigan Public Service Commission is very much like a court case, and it is very expensive. We have to secure expert witnesses, we have to prepare testimony, we have to prepare cross-examination. We're working with Olson, Bisdock, and Howard out of Traverse City as our environmental attorneys for this intervention, and we could certainly use your financial support as we move forward. if you've got a few spare dollars that you'd like to direct towards this effort, MEC would welcome that with open arms, as would our allies, National Wildlife Federation and Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. So thanks for your support. Thanks for your interest. Look forward to catching up with you the next time around.